At my father's award ceremony, he praised my siblings, then gestured vaguely at me. From the back, a voice said, "Sir, your daughter's name is already on that plaque." Everyone turned to the wall and then to me. The Arlington Officers Club ballroom held 300 people in dress uniforms. My father stood at the podium accepting the Defense Distinguished Service Medal. Admiral Lawrence Holloway, retired, 4 stars, 38 years of service. His moment, his night. I sat at table 7 in my service-dressed blues, hands folded, occupying space the way I'd learned to occupy space in this family, quietly, without expectation. I couldn't have done this without my family, Dad said, his voice carrying across the room with command presence that hadn't diminished in retirement. Here we go. My wife, Diane, who stood beside me through every deployment, every transfer, every impossible schedule, 40 years of patience and grace. Mom touched her pearls, smiled. My son, Blake, who followed the path and made it his own. Lieutenant Colonel now, Pentagon staff, making decisions that matter. Blake sat straighter in his Army service uniform. His wife squeezed his hand. Dad's eyes found me. Paused. I watched him search for something to say. And my other son, Ethan, who he gestured vaguely in my direction. "Who's here tonight supporting the family?" That was it. Polite applause rippled through the ballroom. Blake smirked. Mom looked sympathetic in that way that somehow made it worse. I'd heard variations of this speech my entire life. At family dinners, they asked about my health, my apartment, whether I was seeing anyone. Never about my work. "What is it you do exactly?" Uncle Raymond had asked at Thanksgiving 2 years ago. "Something in intelligence," Mom had answered for me. "Computers, I think." Intelligence. Computers. That's what I told them 8 years ago when I made Major. It was easier than explaining I was running covert operations in 3 different theaters. Easier than fighting for oxygen in rooms where Blake's career trajectory had already been decided as the only story worth telling. Intelligence work. Dad would say when people asked, "Important, I'm sure, just not something he can talk about," which was true and also convenient because if I couldn't talk about it, they didn't have to ask about it. Dad continued his acceptance speech, thanked the Secretary of Defense, made closing remarks about duty and legacy and the next generation of warriors. More applause. He stepped down, working his way back to our table through a crowd of well-wishers. "Beautiful speech, Larry," Mom said, kissing his cheek. "Proud of you, Dad." Blake stood to shake his hand. "Well-deserved." I opened my mouth to add my congratulations when a voice cut through the ambient conversation. "Excuse me, Admiral Holloway." Everyone turned. A Marine colonel stood near the wall display, a glass case containing medals and plaques commemorating past recipients. Tall, late 40s service ribbons covering his left chest. "Sir," he said louder, "I apologize for the interruption, but I think there's been an oversight." The ballroom quieted, not gradually, instantly. 300 people sensing something irregular. "Your son's name is already on that plaque," the colonel said. 2018 recipient. The silence deepened, became oppressive. "What?" Dad's voice carried the sharp edge of someone used to being obeyed, not confused. The Marine colonel pointed at the glass case. The Defense Distinguished Service Medal plaque, Major Ethan Holloway, 2018. 300 heads turned in unison. On the wall under museum lighting, the plaque gleamed. Defense Distinguished Service Medal recipients. 2016, VDM. Robert Chen, 2017. LGN Margaret Price, 2018. May Ethan Holloway, 2019. RADM James Burton. 2020, Coel Sarah Westfield. My father stared at the wall, then at me. His face cycled through confusion, disbelief, something that looked like betrayal. "Major," he said. The words sounded foreign in his mouth. Blake's chair scraped backward. "That's impossible." But Rear Admiral Patricia Morgan was already moving toward our table, her heels clicking against hardwood with purpose. She stopped beside me, 50-some, silver hair pulled back severely, 2 stars on her shoulder boards. "Admiral Holloway," she said to my father. Her voice carried across the silent ballroom. "I believe there's been a significant misunderstanding about your son's service record." Dad couldn't form words. "Colonel Ethan Holloway," Morgan continued, each word landing like artillery. "Former commanding officer, 3rd Special Forces Group, currently assigned to the Defense Intelligence Agency as Senior Operations Officer for Middle East Theater. 2 Bronze Stars with Valor Device, Purple Heart, Joint Service Achievement Medal." She paused. "Defense Distinguished Service Medal for classified operations in Syria that prevented a humanitarian catastrophe. An operation I personally recommended him for." Mom's hand was over her mouth. Blake looked like someone had just recalculated his entire worldview. "You're a colonel." Dad's voice barely carried past our table. I looked at him. "Really?" Looked at him. "Yes. Special Forces was for 6 years. Now DIA, why didn't you tell me?" I stood slowly. My chair didn't scrape. I'd learned to move quietly in rooms where noise could cost lives. "I did 8 years ago when I made Major." "You said that's good, son," and asked Blake about his assignment at Fort Benning. The memory landed like ordnance. "I told you I was deploying. You asked if I'd have email access. I told you I'd been selected for advanced operations. You asked if I was eating enough." My voice stayed level, quiet. "I stopped elaborating because you stopped hearing me." "Ethan," Mom started. "I'm not angry," I said. "I just got tired of competing for space in conversations that had already decided who I was." Blake found his voice. "You let us think. I let you think whatever you wanted to think. It was easier than correct correcting you every time you assumed I was pushing papers somewhere. Admiral Morgan cleared her throat. For what it's worth, Admiral Holloway, your son is being considered for Brigadier General. If selected, he'd be one of the youngest flag officers in DIA history. The ballroom remained frozen. 300 people watching a family fracture in real time. My father looked at the plaque at me. At Morgan, his mouth opened, closed. Finally, I didn't know. No, I agreed. You didn't. I picked up my cover from the table. Congratulations on your medal, Dad. You earned it. I walked toward the exit. The crowd parted automatically. At the door, I looked back once. My father stood at table 7. The Defense Distinguished Service Medal still in its presentation case, staring at the wall at the plaque, proving his son had earned the same recognition 6 years earlier, while he'd spent those same 6 years not bothering to ask what I actually did. I need to back up. My name is Ethan Holloway. I'm 41 years old. I've been in the military for 19 years. For 16 of those years, my family thought I worked a desk job. It wasn't deliberate deception. It was exhaustion. I was 22 when I commissioned through ROC, infantry officer, second lieutenant. Blake was already a captain in the Army stationed at Fort Hood, the golden child who'd gone to West Point like Dad wanted. I'd gone to a state school, joined ROC on my own, paid my own way through college, working nights at a warehouse. At my commissioning ceremony, Dad shook my hand and said, "Now you're in the club." Then he spent the next 30 minutes talking to Blake about his upcoming deployment to Iraq. I deployed 6 months later, Afghanistan, 15 months in Kandahar province. When I came back, the family dinner conversation went like this. "How was it?" Mom asked. "Challenging? Educational? Did you stay safe?" "Yes, ma'am." "That's good, honey." "Blake, tell your father about your new position." And just like that, the conversation moved on. I learned early that in this family, military service was only interesting if it involved rank advancement, prestigious assignments, or proximity to power. Blake had all three. I had dirt, bullets, and operational security clearances that prevented me from discussing what I actually did. So, I stopped trying. I made captain at 26, early promotion, top block on my evaluation. I called Dad to tell him, "That's great, son. You're moving up. Blake just got selected for major. Can you believe it? My boy's both climbing." "Yeah, congratulations to Blake. He's thinking about grad school, maybe Harvard Kennedy School. That would really set him up for 06. "That sounds good. What about you? What's your next assignment?" "Can't really discuss it. Classified." Right. Well, keep your head down and stay safe." He hung up after 3 minutes. Blake had called him right before me. They talked for 40 minutes about his career options. I know because Mom told me later. "Your father is so proud of Blake," she said. "It's wonderful to see. She didn't add of you too. She didn't need to." At 28, I was selected for Special Forces Assessment and Selection at Fort Bragg, then the Q course, a year of training that broke better men than me. I graduated second in my class. The only person ahead of me was a former Marine Raider who could navigate by the stars and build explosives from hardware store components. I became a Green Beret, earned my tab, got assigned to 3rd Special Forces Group. I called home to share the news. Special Forces? Mom said that sounds dangerous. "It's elite, Mom. Selective. Good for my career. I wish you'd chosen something safer, like Blake's staff position." I didn't bother explaining that Blake's staff position existed because people like me did things that required operational security classifications. "I'll be fine, Mom." "Well, be careful." "Oh, before I forget, Blake got engaged. Isn't that wonderful?" The conversation shifted. Blake's engagement, the wedding planning, the venue, the guest list. My Special Forces selection got 30 seconds. His wedding got 30 minutes. I deployed to Afghanistan again at 29, then Iraq, then Syria. 3 years of rotations, village clearances, high V-value target operations, training indigenous forces, things I couldn't talk about, things that left scars I couldn't show. At family Christmas in 2017, Uncle Raymond asked what I'd been up to. "Deployments," I said. "Middle East, mostly. Still doing that computer intelligence thing." I'd never said computers. Mom had filled that in years ago, and it had become family canon, something like that. "Blake's at the Pentagon now," Uncle Raymond said. "Big office working directly for a 3-star. Your dad must be thrilled. He should be. Blake's doing great, and you're still serving, staying busy." Raymond nodded and moved on to talk to Blake about Pentagon politics. I stood in the kitchen alone drinking beer, watching my family orbit around Blake like he was the sun, and I was some distant asteroid they occasionally remembered existed. The Syria operation happened in February 2018. I can't give details. Most of it's still classified. What I can say, intelligence indicated an imminent chemical weapons deployment against civilian populations. We had 72 hours to locate and neutralize the threat. My team went in, 12 of us, 3 vehicles, no support. We found the facility, secured the assets, extracted high V-value intelligence that prevented catastrophic loss of life. 2 of my guys took injuries. Not serious, but serious enough. I took shrapnel from a secondary explosion embedded in my left shoulder, Purple Heart, Bronze Star with Valor device, and a recommendation for the Defense Distinguished Service Medal that Admiral Patricia Morgan pushed through personally. I was 33 years old. The ceremony was classified. Small room at Fort Bragg. 20 people. A 2-star general I'd never met pinned the medal on my chest and shook my hand. "Your country owes you a debt it can never repay," he said. I called Dad afterward. "Hey, Dad, got some news. Make it quick, son." Blake's promotion ceremony starts in 20 minutes. We're heading to Fort Myer. I received a medal today. Defense Distinguished Service. Silence. That's a Heil Award, isn't it? Second highest non-combat decoration below the Medal of Honor and Defense Superior Service Medal. More silence. Well, congratulations. That's really something. Thanks. Listen, I need to go. We can't be late for Blake's ceremony. He's making Lieutenant Colonel, youngest in his year group. That's great. Congratulations to him. I'll tell your mother about your medal. She'll be proud. He hung up. Blake's promotion ceremony lasted 2 hours. There was a reception afterward, a photographer, formal portraits. Mom posted 17 photos on Facebook. My medal ceremony got a single comment 3 days later. That's wonderful, honey. No photos, no questions, no follow-up, just an emoji. I made Lieutenant Colonel at 35. Blake made Colonel at 37. Guess which promotion made the family group chat explode with congratulations? So proud. Our boy is a colonel. Following in your father's footsteps. My promotion got congrats, Ethan. One message from my cousin who probably felt bad. Nobody else had said anything. When I transitioned to the Defense Intelligence Agency at 38, I thought maybe things would change. DIA is high profile, strategic, the kind of assignment that sounds impressive, even if you don't understand what it means. I called Dad to tell him. Defense Intelligence Agency, I said. Senior Operations Officer for Middle East Theater. That's good, son. You'll be working with smart people. It's a senior leadership position, Dad. Strategic level. I'm briefing Joint Chiefs. That's great. Really great. Listen, Blake just found out he's being considered for the War College. That's a huge career indicator. Means they're grooming him for flag rank. That's great for Blake. He wants your father's advice on the application essay. We're having dinner with him this weekend. Can you make it? I'm in DC, Dad. You're in Virginia Beach. That's a 3-hour drive. Well, when you can then. Blake really values family input. Sure, I didn't drive down. Blake got his War College slot. I got another deployment. At 39, I was running operations across 7 countries. My day started at 500 with intelligence briefs and ended at 2,300 with encrypted communications to field teams. I had 87 people under my operational authority. I briefed generals, admirals, and occasionally the Secretary of Defense on threat assessments that could shift entire regional strategies. I was good at my job. I was also invisible to my family. Dad's retirement ceremony was in 2022. 4-star Admiral Lawrence Holloway, 38 years of distinguished service. The ceremony was at Naval Station Norfolk, Dress White's Honor Guard, a band playing as Dad crossed the stage. During his speech, he thanked the Navy, my wife Diane, who sacrificed her own career to support mine, my son Blake, who proved that excellence runs in families, and my son Ethan, who serves in his own way, like I was volunteering at a soup kitchen instead of preventing regional conflicts. After the ceremony, a Navy captain approached me at the reception. "You're Ethan Holloway?" he asked. "Yes, sir. David Frost. I work maritime intelligence. We use your theater assessments constantly. Your work on the Iranian naval analysis last year was exceptional. Shifted our entire posture. Thank you, sir." He lowered his voice. "Your father know what you actually do? He knows I'm at DIA." Frost studied my face. "But he doesn't know you're the guy writing the assessments that admirals wait for before making decisions." "No, sir, he doesn't." Frost shook his head. "That's a damn shame." He walked away. I stood alone at my father's retirement reception, surrounded by Navy brass who knew my work better than my own family did. Which brings us to tonight, the Arlington Officers Club, the Defense Distinguished Service Medal ceremony, Dad's second major award in retirement, a capstone honor. He gave his speech, thanked everyone who mattered, gestured vaguely at me like I was furniture, and then that Marine colonel spoke up, pointed at the plaque, and everything changed. Admiral Morgan wasn't finished. After I'd walked toward the exit, after the crowd had parted after the shock had started to settle, she spoke again. Her voice carried across the ballroom. "For those who don't know Colonel Holloway's record, allow me to provide context." I stopped walking. He enlisted in ROC without family connections or academy influence. Commissioned as an infantry officer, earned early promotion to captain through merit, selected for Special Forces, a program with an 80% attrition rate, and graduated with distinction. The room was silent. He deployed 6 times to combat zones, led direct action missions in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. His operations resulted in the disruption of terrorist networks, protection of civilian populations, and intelligence collection that informed national-level decision-making. Morgan pulled reading glasses from her pocket, unfolded a paper. His awards include 2 Bronze Stars with Valor Device, Purple Heart, Joint Service Achievement Medal, Defense Distinguished Service Medal, Combat Infantryman Badge, Special Forces Tab, Ranger Tab, and multiple classified commendations I'm not authorized to discuss in this setting. She looked directly at my father. He currently holds one of the most sensitive positions in the Defense Intelligence Agency. His work influences policy decisions at the cabinet level. He briefs the National Security Council, and he's being considered for Brigadier General through deep selection, meaning he'll outrank 95% of his peers if selected. Morgan folded the paper. "Admiral Holloway, your son, isn't someone who serves in his own way. He's one of the most accomplished officers of his generation. The fact that you didn't know that says more about the questions you didn't ask than the answers he didn't give." The silence was absolute. Morgan turned to me. "Colonel Holloway, you're dismissed." asked. With respect, I nodded, walked out. Behind me, I heard nothing. No one followed. No one called my name. I drove back to my apartment in Alexandria, 1100 square FT, sparsely furnished, walls covered with maps and photos from deployments. I poured bourbon, sat on my couch. My phone buzzed. Text from Blake. We need to talk. I didn't respond. Another text. Mom, Ethan, please call me. I turned my phone off. I didn't want to talk, didn't want to explain, didn't want to hear apologies that came 6 years too late. Admiral Morgan called me the next morning. How are you holding up? She asked. Fine, ma'am. That was quite a scene last night. Yes, ma'am. Your father tried to speak with me after you left. Wanted to know why no one had informed him about your record. I didn't respond. I told him the truth that you've never hidden anything. You've simply stopped volunteering information to people who weren't interested in hearing it. She paused. He asked for your contact information. I told him he's your father. He should already have it. Despite everything, I smiled. Thank you, ma'am. For what it's worth, Ethan, you're one of the finest officers I've worked with. Your family's ignorance doesn't diminish that. I appreciate that. The Brigadier General Board meets in 6 weeks. You're on the list. Strong recommendation from me and 3 other flag officers. Don't let last night derail you. No, ma'am. She hung up. I stared at my phone for a long time. Dad showed up at my apartment 3 days later. I'd ignored 17 calls and 43 text messages from various family members. The knock on my door at 1800 hours was distinctive. Military cadence, 3 sharp raps. I opened it. Dad stood in civilian clothes, khakis, and a navy polo. He looked older than he had at the ceremony. Tired. Can I come in? He asked. I stepped aside. He entered slowly, taking in the apartment, the maps, the photos, the deployment memorabilia I'd never shown anyone. You've been busy, he said. Yes. He turned to face me. Why didn't you tell me? I did tell you repeatedly. You didn't hear me. I mean, really, tell me. Make me understand. I poured 2 bourbons, handed him one. Dad, I tried for years. Every promotion, every medal, every assignment, I called you. I told you what I could tell you. And every time the conversation lasted 3 minutes before you pivoted to Blake. He looked at his drink. I made captain. You asked Blake about his major promotion. I made major. You asked Blake about his Pentagon assignment. I got the Defense Distinguished Service Medal, the highest honor I'll probably ever receive. And you said, that's nice, and hung up to attend Blake's ceremony. My voice stayed level. You decided 20 years ago that Blake was the success story, and I was the supporting character. I stopped fighting that narrative because fighting it hurt more than accepting it. Dad sat heavily on my couch. I didn't realize. You didn't ask. That's different than not realizing. Silence. Blake told me you briefed the National Security Council, Dad said quietly. Sometimes, he said, you're being considered for general. I am, and you've deployed 6 times. 7, actually. 1 still classified. Dad looked at me. Really looked at me. I'm proud of you. Are you? Yes. You should have been proud of me 8 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You shouldn't need a public call out at an awards ceremony to realize your son has been doing extraordinary things his entire career. I took a drink. You know what hurt the most, Dad? It wasn't being overlooked. It wasn't Blake getting all the attention. It was realizing that if that Marine colonel hadn't spoken up, you would have gone the rest of your life never knowing what I actually accomplished. Dad's hands were shaking. You would have told people I work in intelligence, something with computers, and you would have been satisfied with that vague answer because you were never curious enough to dig deeper. I'm sorry, he said. I know you are, but sorry doesn't give me back 20 years of feeling invisible in my own family. He stood, walked to my wall of photos, combat deployments, teams of men in desert camouflage, award ceremonies I'd never mentioned. This was at Fort Bragg, I said, pointing. My Special Forces graduation. I called you that day. You were busy with Blake's wedding planning. I pointed to another photo. Baghdad, 2015. That's my team after a successful high-value target operation. 3 bronze stars between us. I called to tell you about my bronze star. You talked for 90 seconds and hung up. Another photo. Syria. The operation that earned me the DDSM. The one that's on the plaque you stood next to for an hour without noticing. Dad's eyes were wet. I didn't know, he whispered. You could have. All you had to do was ask. The conversation lasted 3 hours. Dad asked questions, real questions, about my deployments, my team, my work at DIA. He asked about the Syria operation, what I could tell him, which wasn't much. He asked about the scars I carried, physical and otherwise. He asked about the men I'd led, the decisions I'd made, the weight of command. For the first time in 20 years, he treated my career as something worth understanding. When he left, he hugged me. Not the brief formal embrace we'd exchanged for decades. A real hug, father to son. I'm sorry I didn't see you, he said, but I see you now. That's something. It's not enough, but it's a start. He walked to his car. I watched from my doorway until he drove away. The Brigadier General selection list was published 6 weeks later. My name was on it. Deep selection. Youngest DIA flag officer in 15 years. Dad called me within minutes. I just saw the list. He said, "Congratulations, General. Not official yet. Senate confirmation still needed. It'll go through. You've earned it." Pause. "Can I throw you a party? A proper one. Family, friends, Navy, and Army brass. A real celebration." I thought about it. "No thanks, Dad. I don't need a party. Ethan, what I need is for you to keep asking questions, keep calling, keep being interested in what I do instead of just celebrating outcomes. I can do that, then that's enough." 3 months later, I was confirmed as Brigadier General, 1 star. The promotion ceremony ceremony was at DIA headquarters. Small gathering, classified facility. Dad couldn't attend because he didn't have the clearance, but he called me afterward. How was it? He asked. Good. Low-key, Admiral Morgan pinned the star. You have plans to celebrate? Not really. Just dinner with some colleagues. That's good. Pause. Listen, I'm working on something. A research project about overlooked military leaders. People who did extraordinary things without recognition. Yeah, I'd like to interview you about your career, your experiences. Get it documented properly. I smiled. You want to write about me? I want to understand you. The writing is just a vehicle. Okay, we can do that. Thank you, son. We talked for 40 minutes. He asked about my responsibilities as a general, my plans, my goals. He didn't mention Blake once. 6 months after the Arlington Officers Club ceremony, Blake called me. We hadn't spoken since that night. Hey, he said, you got a minute? Sure. I've been thinking about that ceremony, about everything that happened. Okay, I owe you an apology. I waited. I spent my entire career assuming I was the accomplished one, the one Dad was proud of, the one who mattered. His voice cracked slightly. And it turns out you were doing things I can't even comprehend. Leading men in combat, making decisions that affect national policy, earning medals I'll never be eligible for. Blake, no, let me finish. I was dismissive of you. I was condescending. I let Mom and Dad treat you like an afterthought because it reinforced my own sense of importance. He took a breath. That was wrong. You deserved better from me. Thanks for saying that. I mean it. And I'm sorry it took a public call out for me to see it. We talked for an hour about our careers, our different paths, our father's expectations, and our own insecurities. It didn't fix everything, but it was something. 1 year after the ceremony, I was promoted to Major General. 2 stars, youngest 2-star in DIA history. Dad attended the ceremony. So did Mom and Blake. They sat in the front row. When the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs pinned the stars on my shoulders, my father stood and saluted. A retired 4-star admiral saluting his 2-star son.